President Biden said in a recent interview from France he would not pardon his son Hunter if Hunter is found guilty in his federal gun trial.
Let me ask you, will you accept the jury's outcome, their verdict, no matter what it is?
Yes.
And have you ruled out a pardon for your son?
Yes.
You have.
All right, today marks day 5 of the trial, which has at times been painful for the Biden family. Court proceedings delving into a difficult period in which Hunter struggled with drug addiction after the passing of his brother Beau. Beau's widow, Hallie Biden, who had a romantic relationship with Hunter at one point, described how he introduced her to crack cocaine. David Chalian, many layers to this trial, but the president's statement about pardoning his son, a remarkable one. Not pardoning his son, to be clear.
Yes, that he would not pardon his son, which when you think about how for Joe Biden, family above all else, and yet he sees that, it seems, in some way untoward for a president, just like he won't go to the trial as president, which is happening in federal court, to pardon his son in this matter. Now, we'll see if he holds to that and how this all plays out. He clearly also enjoys the contrast for how Trump handles pardons. There's no doubt. I do just want to say about the First Lady, though, here. Leaving France, coming back, expected back in court today, to go back to France tomorrow in a state visit. Sort of the matriarch of this family, I think she gets under-noticed in that role because we think of it as such Joe Biden's clan. But what Jill Biden is doing in I think, standing in for her husband who can't be there to try and be the rock for the family at this time is a role we just haven't seen from her on the public stage so much.
Really interesting. Sarah, you have talked with focus group participants about Hunter Biden. What do they say about all of this?
Yeah, it's so interesting because Hunter Biden comes up a lot. And the way the voters are very compassionate about it, almost to a surprising degree, where they say, man, you know, everybody's got somebody like this in their family. And people talk about their own experiences and dealing with whether it's kids or people in their family. And so what they say is they say, look, if if it turns out that Joe Biden was somehow involved in Hunter's activities, they will take that into account. But other than that, they see it as Hunter Biden just being sort of a black sheep, and they feel a certain amount, compassion.
Really interesting.
I want to talk about all of this with Democratic strategist Laura Fink and also CNN political commentator Essie Cupp, who has a brand new show that we'll talk about in a moment. But on this statement from President Biden, what did you make of his answer tonight?
I thought it was smart, and I thought it blended well with all of his previous statements about the rule of law. He had to toe the line. It's got to be really painful because Hunter Biden is his son. He's watching him get dragged through the mud and his drug addiction be on for all eyes to see. So the challenge for him is really to continue to live up to his values when it was really personal, and he did that today.
It seems like a pretty normal, straightforward answer, but it takes new weight when we see what Trump is saying about the outcome of his trial, what we're hearing from other Republicans who say they don't accept the jury's verdict here in New York.
The contrast is profound, and I did a piece for CNN.com just on this today. For Joe Biden to sit there and say, well, I'm not going to intervene in the legal process, and I wouldn't pardon my son, I argue that requires more restraint than if he were talking about himself, which is what Trump does, right? He's talking about himself. And then contrast that with all the Republicans calling every trial rigged and a witch hunt, attacking judges and their families, dressing up in matching costumes to go down and lie for Trump in front of the courthouse. I mean, it is a very profound contrast. You have one side, Democrats and Joe Biden protecting the justice system, and on the other, Republicans and Trump protecting Trump.
Yeah, it's remarkable to hear that, and also to say he won't pardon him, because that had the White House had said that, but we had not heard it from President Biden himself yet. And the other thing with Trump is he's back on the campaign trail tonight. It's the first time he's been on the campaign trail since he became a convicted felon. And he did an interview with Dr. Phil, Laura, and he said this part about what we were just talking about with the congresswoman there getting revenge on his political enemies. He said, revenge takes time. I will say that, and sometimes revenge can be justified. But I have to be honest, sometimes it can. This is a recurring theme that we are now seeing.
The political consequences of focusing exclusively on his own victimization, it may show up at the ballot box to come back to haunt him, because he knows that this is something that he does by default. But that's not what voters are focused on. So constantly to bemoan his plight, when the reality is, even with all of the right-wing ecosystem weighing in the same way, we see a majority of voters that trusted the verdict, trusted the jury, thought that the system worked in this case. So, and that was with Democrats largely silent on the matter as well.
Yeah, and Biden himself weighed in on this verdict. This is what he had to say.
Stop undermining the rule of law. Stop undermining the institutions. That's what this whole effort is. All the MAGA Republicans are coming out saying this was a fix. This was a jury that this was a judge that set up to get Trump. There's no evidence of any of that. None. He's trying to undermine it. Look, he got a fair trial. The jury spoke like they speak in all cases, and it should be respected.
Listen, Biden's in a tough spot. Trump is leading the story, the narrative, right? He wants to talk about the trials, so Biden has to talk about the trials. If Trump were talking about the issues, it would force Biden to talk about the issues, and the issues do not favor Joe Biden, mostly, if you look at crime, immigration, and the economy. So none of this makes any political sense, but we're in such a warped political environment where we have so many unprecedented stories. Both of these trials are unprecedented. It's dominating the news, and Laura's right. This is not what swing state undecided voters care about. They care about issues.
Jim, I want to ask you about another thing that President Biden also has in his orbit, that obviously he's in Normandy. Obviously, this is an election year, but also he's ruled out pardoning his son Hunter if he is convicted on these gun charges in the trial that we're following here. Do you even anticipate Hunter being an issue politically for President Biden over the course of this campaign season? Does that decision to go out and say right off the bat, I'm not planning to pardon him, help him politically? How do you see that dynamic playing into this campaign season?
Well, Omar, first of all, I think it's the right thing to do, to absolutely rule it out and be like, I'm not going to use my powers to help my family. That's exactly the right thing to do. I don't think voters really think about this stuff about the kids and the family members. They look at this in a really clear prism, Omar. What are these two going to do to make my life better in the next 4 years? And that's what they're desperate to hear from both of these campaigns. And to Jason's very smart point earlier, they don't want to hear about revenge from Donald Trump. They don't want to hear about Joe Biden's family. They want both of these people to say, here's what I'm going to do and here's why.